Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Elder Scrolls 6 discussion series. My name's Camel, and in this video we are going to be discussing the possible locations for the Elder Scrolls 6. Before we get into the video, I'd like to give a shout out to Fudge Muppet, my good friends Michael and Scott over at Fudge Muppet, who also do Elder Scrolls 6 discussion videos. I'll leave a link to their channel in the description, be sure to check them out. Now, the Elder Scrolls 6, there are so many possible locations, as we have all of Tamriel, and then we also have all of Nirn to play with. Okay, so first up, I'm going to crush a couple of dreams. The Elder Scrolls 6 will not be set on the whole of Akavir. A lot of people do actually want the Elder Scrolls 6 to be set on the entire continent of Akavir. I personally think this is a horrible idea, as if they set the game on the whole of Akavir, what do they do after that? Head back to Tamriel and do a normal Elder Scrolls game, which only covers one province? Then people will be whinging about how they went from such a big, awesome game to such a small, tiny game. People be whinging, complaining, all kinds of stuff. If they made a game for every province in Tamriel, they could do exactly the same for Akavir, and it will just make the Elder Scrolls series live on and last longer. Let's just say, for example, that it took 4 years to make Skyrim. If we take a look at the size of Skyrim and compare that to the size of Akavir, if we want the entire continent of Akavir to have the same level of love and detail that went into Skyrim, it would take 4 years for an area the size of Skyrim, so the area of Akavir, which is about 10 times the size, would take 10 times as long, so we're looking at waiting for about 40 years if you want to see the entire continent of Akavir for the Elder Scrolls 6. Does anyone want to wait 40 years? No. And I personally would like to see a greater level of love and detail in the Elder Scrolls 6 than that which was in Skyrim, which is asking for a lot, but if I was to get that in the entire continent of Akavir, it would take even more than 40 years. And I personally do not want to wait 40 years for the Elder Scrolls 6. Keeping everything of what I just said in mind, I think for the exact same reasons they will not set the Elder Scrolls 6 on the entire continent of Tamriel. I think they will always do it province by province. This gives the awesome team they have over at Bethesda the time to put the love, detail, and effort into making the game of a province awesome. Sure, they could put out a game every year, sure they could make the areas bigger, but the level of detail and continuity and love would be minimal and lacking, and it would destroy the Elder Scrolls series. So they will certainly set the Elder Scrolls 6 in a province of Tamriel. But before we move straight back to Tamriel, I just want to quickly talk about the surrounding islands around Tamriel. Down to the south here, we have Pyan-Donia. To the southwest of Pyan-Donia, we have Aldmeris. To the north of Aldmeris, we have Thras and Yokuda. To the north of Skyrim, we have Rosgria. And to the north of that, we have Atmora. And to the east of Morrowind and Blackmarsh, we have Esroniot, Inslia, and Cathnaqui. Now, some of those islands are, in fact, bigger or smaller than provinces found on Tamriel, so that it would make them a very viable option or location to set an Elder Scrolls game. However, because there's still so much to explore on Tamriel, I don't think, for the Elder Scrolls 6 anyway, that they will be set on any of these surrounding islands. Okay, so here on screen we can see a map of Tamriel, and it has highlighted areas. The highlighted areas are the areas that have already been covered in previous Elder Scrolls games. Solstime's done, Skyrim's done, Cyrodiil's done, but then we have some interesting things, like in Daggerfall it covered sections of High Rock and a very small section of Hammerfell. In Morrowind it only covered Vardenfell, and we never explored the south, west, and east areas of Morrowind apart from Mournhold, of course, in the Tribunal expansion, but I'd hardly call the city of Mournhold exploring the southern areas of Morrowind. I have no doubt in my mind that at some point the Bethesda team will go back and make a game set in, say, Hammerfell, make a game set in High Rock, or make a game set in the southern, eastern, and western areas of Morrowind. However, for the Elder Scrolls 6, I don't think they will be doing that because they have partially been covered, and I think that they will go and fully flesh out and let us explore a completely new area before they go back to these provinces that we've already partially explored. I think the southern 4 unexplored provinces are much more likely to be the setting for the Elder Scrolls 6. And those southern 4 are, of course, the Somerset Isles, Valenwood elsewhere, and Blackmarsh. But let's not count the other 3 out of the picture. So let's start at High Rock. How would I feel about Elder Scrolls 6 being set in High Rock? I would love it. I would love to explore the Breton home landscape. It would be gorgeous to explore the lush countrysides of High Rock down near Daggerfell, and then the barren, badland, blasted land, wastelands, the dead, dusty earth, big grey rocks, dead trees, broken castles up towards the north. I really do love the Breton architecture as well. I think High Rock would be actually a really awesome place for the Elder Scrolls 6 to be set. I certainly would love to explore that area, although I'm not a fan of the more human areas because they feel less fantasy to me, just because it feels like I'm running through somewhere that is actually on Earth. I feel like the Breton area, because they are slightly descendant from elves, I feel like their culture and their landscape has a much more fantasy vibe to it, so I would be quite excited to explore that, and I would love to see how the modern Bethesda team fleshes out and presents High Rock to us in modern day graphics. And yes, we have seen sections of it in Daggerfall, but of course those graphics are from what will be 20 years ago by the time the Elder Scrolls 6 actually comes out, so it would be quite exciting to see them redo High Rock in modern graphics, and of course to let us explore the entirety of High Rock. And next up we have Hammerfell, the region of Hammerfell, and this is an exciting idea, and to me I think it's a much more likely idea than High Rock to be the location for the Elder Scrolls 6, just because much less of it was explored in the game Daggerfall. We only saw a small section of it, which does leave a relatively large area of Hammerfell to still be explored, and Hammerfell is an exciting area. It's quite large as well. It is the home to the Redguards and the Orcs, the Orzammar, both of which their cultures I am very interested in experiencing firsthand. The beautiful and vast naval cities of the Redguard culture, with their amazing and stunning deserty architecture, beautiful dancing sand dunes that go on for miles with oases and cliffs and small jungly areas. It would be an excellent setting for a fantasy game, the Elder Scrolls 6. And then of course, to more inland, there's the more rocky areas and there's more grassland and fertile lands. And then we get into the Orcish cultures, a much more tribal feel, which I would like to go back to and re-experience after experiencing the really tribal cultures that we saw in the game Morrowind on Vardenfell with the Ash tribes. It would be very interesting, and I think it would give us a very lovely and cultural experience in the Orcish cultures, understanding their tribes, their traditions. It's a very interesting idea to me, and I would freaking love Hammerfell to be the setting for the Elder Scrolls 6. I really want to explore there. I'm very keen to see a deserty area, opposed to say Skyrim and Oblivion where we had grassy plains, you know, mountains, snow, stuff like that. I'd love to see a harsher, hotter area covered, just for something different. I mean, I don't favor it over the others, we just haven't seen it yet, so I would be very keen to see something like that. So Hammerfell is a very cool idea for me. And lastly, for the less likely choices for the Elder Scrolls 6 locations, we have Morrowind. The game Morrowind, the Elder Scrolls 3, I think, I'm still not decided, but I'm quite sure it is my favorite Elder Scrolls game. Yeah, it is. It is my favorite Elder Scrolls game. I much preferred a lot of the mechanics and graphics in Skyrim, but at the core of it, Morrowind was a better game for me. So the idea of heading back to Morrowind and exploring the rest of it is very exciting. I absolutely loved how alien and magical and high fantasy the island of Vardenfell felt. I'm sure you'll agree that in Cyrodiil and in Skyrim, you feel very at home. You feel like you could be in Europe, in England, running through grassy plains, or in Germany, looking at these amazing snowy mountains. You know, it felt very earthy. There was deer, wolves. It felt very familiar. Whereas in Morrowind, we had flying squid, giant mushrooms, magic mushroom cities that you needed levitation to even travel up, giant singing crystals under the ground, giving cities magical powers. Like, Morrowind felt much more alien and high fantasy to me, and the idea of heading back to Morrowind to re-explore that and re-experience that is a very, very exciting prospect. With that said, no matter which area they do cover, I just really hope that they take in that high fantasy essence again. I never want to feel at home in an Elder Scrolls game. I want to feel like I'm stepping into a new, unexplored, unfamiliar world. There's still so many volcanic areas, and down to the south we have a much more, I suppose, tropical, a more humid climate down the south. So it does excite me very much, the idea of heading to the southwest and east of Morrowind and exploring those areas and just reliving that high fantasy vibe. Very exciting idea, but just like High Rock and Hammerfell, Morrowind to me is a less likely option because we've already partially explored and experienced it. Okay, so that leaves us with the 4 provinces that to me are extremely likely, and I am willing to put money down that The Elder Scrolls 6 will be set in one of these 4 provinces. So first up, let's cover Elsewhere, whatever it's called. The home of the Khajiit. This is a very exciting idea. We've never seen an area that belongs to a beast race before, and I suppose the only other area is Black Marsh belonging to the Argonians. If I'm to be honest, much more interested in exploring the non-human race cultures and the landscapes which of course shaped these non-human cultures, the beast races and the elves. So Elsewhere, very cool idea. I'd love to see the home of the Khajiit with huge rolling deserts, vast canyons, with even dense jungles and rainforests. It's with a very tropical feel to the south with palm trees and beaches and desert. It's very cool. I do like the idea of their architecture as well. They're probably, along with the Argonians, the least talked about or experienced culture or race in the Elder Scrolls traditionally, so it is exciting to go and dive into this relatively unknown or seldom spoken about area. We do see a lot of racism towards the beast races. We even saw that in Skyrim, how the Khajiit caravans had to set up their camps and stores outside of the cities of Skyrim because they weren't allowed into the cities because they were a beast race. So I do love the idea of getting to experience their culture and their homeland firsthand. I think that would be really cool. Just to experience the cultures would be awesome. So Elsewhere, it's pretty exciting. In terms of geography, a lot of the same reasons as I'm excited about Hammerfell. I'm not specifically keen to experience the Khajiit culture. However, at this point, I'm just really interested in experiencing a non-human culture. And hopefully we can experience those really alien kind of culture shock vibes we got from the game Morrowind. So Elsewhere, not at the top of the list, but dude, this is Tamriel. I want to explore and experience any of these provinces. Okay, so let's move on to Valenwood. Now, I'm doing Valenwood next because there have been rumors, or at least a lot of thoughts, or common thoughts, I've seen this written a lot, that people think because Valenwood and Elsewhere are quite small areas, they're going to be mashed together as a single game. I don't think this is true. I'll talk about that after I cover the rest of the possible areas, but for now, we're going to be covering Valenwood, the sistering province of Elsewhere. Valenwood is probably at the top of my list of provinces that I want to explore and I want the Elder Scrolls 6 to be set in. I say probably because I'm still undecided, but the idea of exploring Valenwood has excited me ever since I first read about it when playing Morrowind. Valenwood is described as a sea of endless green, a maze of foliage with half-hidden cities growing like blooms from a flower. The home of the Bosma is Tamriel's garden. With impenetrable jungles, landscapes consists mainly of rolling hills and light blue rivers, predominantly covered in rainforests and woodlands, savanna areas, jungles, ancient ruins, and of course the home to the wood elves, the Bosma. I remember when I first played Morrowind, I really wanted to see rainforest, I wanted to see jungle, and that is exactly what we could expect to see in Valenwood. Like I said, I'm very keen to experience a non-human culture, so experiencing the wood elf culture in a jungle or a rainforest, yes please, would be so cool. I'm super keen for the Elder Scrolls 6 to be set in Valenwood. It will definitely have a much more wild and ancient vibe than some of the stuff we've seen before. Actually, you know what? I don't think it will feel more ancient. Some of the stuff in Skyrim felt freaking ancient, but I think it will have a much more magical feel because we'll see a lot more Ayleid ruins opposed to the Nordic ruins, and the Ayleid ruins, of course, being elves, have a much different vibe than the Nordic ruins, which were a arguably human race. So to go back and explore these vast, ancient, magical ruins and tombs and cultures, I would really love to do that. It would be very interesting to play a race that is quite close to the Altmer, opposed to what we did in Skyrim where we played the Nords, who were having a pretty big clash with the Thalmor there. Just like in Elsewhere and Hammerfell, I'm very keen to experience the more tribal and more traditional cultures that can be found in Valenwood within the Wood Elf race. So Valenwood, yes, very keen for Valenwood to be the setting for the Elder Scrolls 6. Now let's go over to Black Marsh, the home of the Hist and the Argonians and several other races that I will talk about one day. But Black Marsh, First time I really noticed Black Marsh was in Oblivion when I was down in Blackwood, and I heard about this place called Black Marsh, which was just over the border, which of course you couldn't cross. But what I'd heard and the way the vegetation changed as I got towards Black Marsh, I really liked what I was seeing. So to be able to finally explore the area of Black Marsh would be a dream literally a dream come true. I actually think I had dreams about crossing the border out of Blackwood and into Black Marsh. Very interesting. Black Marsh, very, very interesting and very unique in the sense that it has, I don't know, a very natural ancient feel. There's a lot of a very kind of, I don't know, in other areas you'll have the Dwemer ruins or the Aelid ruins, Nordic ruins, whatever. In Black Marsh you kind of get these giant Aztec looking pyramid things with giant like tree god, like what is happening here? It's very, very alien. I think it would be very interesting to explore. And again, like I said, I really want to explore a jungle, just something different from Skyrim and Oblivion. Very lush vegetation, dense marshes, new creatures. That's a very exciting prospect. It does feel like a very exciting area to cover. The more I think about it, the more excited I get. And actually, I think I've changed my mind. I think Black Marsh is up there now as #1 place that I want to explore over Valenwood. And again, it would be very interesting to explore the more tribal and traditional cultures of the Argonian, and I think it's going to be good for people to experience the Argonian culture or the Argonian landscapes, cities, whatever, firsthand. Because the Argonians and the Khajiit, the beast races, are still probably the least talked about or least interacted with races in Tamriel and even in the Elder Scrolls games, so it would be cool to kind of jump in and really get a feel for them. And I think the Black Marsh would really bring that high fantasy vibe as well. I don't think at any point you would feel at home or like you were on Earth. I feel like there's always something there on screen to let you know that you are in a freaking fantasy land, man. Surrounded by unknown creatures, weird glowing plants, and all kinds of misty bogs and ancient pyramids. It sounds like a freaking awesome place for the Elder Scrolls 6 to be set. The Somerset Isles, what an interesting place that would be for the Elder Scrolls 6 to be set. And I mean that genuinely. It would be so interesting to explore and live the cultures and the landscape. I think it has the cleanest, most refined magical feel. It still feels very alien, yet civilized alien. Civilized magic. Unlike in Valenwood or Black Marsh, where there's huge glowing weird mushroom things and bulbs and weird creatures, it feels much more like the magic has been captured and almost sculpted into this beautiful landscape and architecture. The Ultima, of course, the High Elves are a very proud and magical people. Of course, home to the Thalmor, which could be interesting. That's one of the things I didn't like about Skyrim, is that the Thalmor were definitively evil. Of course, you could just make the decision that they weren't, but in terms of the way they affected you as a character, affected your storylines, they were always the bad guys, and I never liked that in anything. I always feel like there's always two sides to a story. There's always a reason they're doing something, and I wasn't too impressed that you didn't get to explore the Thalmor side of things. So I think it would be really cool, especially freshly coming from Skyrim, to go into the Somerset Isles and explore the Thalmor culture. The High Elf culture would be very interesting. They're a much more high-class culture, I feel, unlike some of the other elven races, like in Valenwood with the Bosmer and Orzammers, the Dunmer. They had a lot of tribal, traditional cultures. I feel like the Somerset Isles with the High Elves holds a very refined, upper class, so to speak, culture of people, and it would be very interesting to explore that. It's much more magic orientated, with of course the High Elves being extremely magical people. And I mean, in terms of the landscape, it is gorgeous. It almost has like a Japanese vibe. I definitely want to explore the Somerset Isles. Every time I start talking about a province, it suddenly becomes my #1 choice for the Elder Scrolls 6. But I think I'm going to stick with Black Marsh here. I think Black Marsh is where I want it to be set. But the Somerset Isles, definitely up there, man. It'd be a very, very cool experience. Okay, so as I mentioned before, how people think that Valenwood and elsewhere might be mashed together into one game. I don't think this is true, because scaling has never been an issue before. The train of thought is that Cyrodiil is that big and Valenwood is that big. You can see there's obviously a size difference, so if they set a game just in Valenwood, obviously you're going to have less game. Not true. If we have a look at where Daggerfall was set in High Rock and Hammerfell in that that bay there and then look at Cyrodiil, we can see that Cyrodiil is larger. However, the map for Cyrodiil in-game was 22 square miles. The map for Daggerfall, keeping in mind that the map for Oblivion was 22 square miles, the map for Daggerfall, which is a smaller area, was a whopping 62,394 square miles. That's correct. The game Daggerfall, its map was literally, roughly, 3,000 times bigger than the map of Oblivion. 3,000 times. If you had a map of Oblivion that was twice as big, that would be massive. 3,000 times the size in an area that is actually smaller than where Oblivion was set. So I mean, if you scale it, it's going to be like, the ratio is going to be like 1 to 20,000. So is scaling an issue? I don't think so. It hasn't been before, and there's no reason that it should become an issue now. Are they going to mash two provinces together? It is possible, but I really don't think it's going to happen. The only reason I could see it happening is if Bethesda feared a lack of variety in landscape or vegetation or something like that. Say if there's an area that's, say, elsewhere, it's jungle and desert, they might be fearing that they can't give the players enough variety and difference. But again, that's never been an issue before. Cyrodiil, it's basically all grass, right? Didn't have an issue with that. Morrowind was quite varied. Skyrim, I mean, in general terms, it was the same kind of thing, but they really gave us a variety of climate and vegetation and ecosystem in Skyrim. So I mean, say Valenwood, all jungle, they're not going to have an issue with making it work. So just to recap the verbal diarrhea that I just sprayed into your face, do I think it'll be set on Akavir? Definitely not. I mean, people are whinging about loading screens in Skyrim. Could you imagine the loading that would be needed to load Akavir? Oh, I don't think it will be set on all of Tamriel, and I don't think it will be set on the surrounding islands. High Rock, Hammerfell, and Morrowind, I think, are less likely to be covered or be locations for the Elder Scrolls 6 because we've already seen sections of them in previous Elder Scrolls games. So will scaling be an issue? I think not. Will fear of environmental variety be an issue? I think not. I'm just really excited to see what they can do for the Elder Scrolls 6, and honestly, wherever they set the Elder Scrolls 6, I'm going to be very happy. So I'm pretty sure I've covered all of the stuff I wanted to talk about in this episode of Elder Scrolls 6 discussions, specifically about the locations. So let's quickly get out of here before I think of something else. Alright, so this series, the Elder Scrolls 6 discussion series, is very dear to me, and I hope can conjure up thoughts, ideas, and interests, whatever, from you guys, because we're all part of the Elder Scrolls community, and at the end of the day, we just want what is best for the Elder Scrolls 6. So that is why it is so important to me, and even for just the community, that you guys put your input into the comments. Let me know all of your ideas, wants, and needs. On this particular video, I would prefer it if it was location related stuff, just so it's much easier for me to go through when I'm doing the rediscussion episode, where not so much I'll talk about my ideas, but I'll take in all of your comments and information, and I will present your ideas to everyone else. But for that to happen, I do need you guys to put input in, and you have done so far. I've had such an incredible response and amount of ideas when I put up the Elder Scrolls 6 discussion introduction video, but specifically on this video, I would be grateful if you just left ideas for the locations for the Elder Scrolls 6. So don't worry, any other topics, you can message me. You can go back to the Elder Scrolls 6 discussion series introduction, post them there, or wait until I upload the appropriate Elder Scrolls 6 discussion video, and you could comment your ideas on that. So please spew out all of your ideas, go nuts, tell me everything you want in the Elder Scrolls 6, and I'll read it and take it in and absorb it like a paper towel. So thank you very much for watching, thank you for listening for so long. I hope that, I don't know what I hope that you did. I hope that you got something out of this discussion video, and even if you hated everything I said, leave a comment telling me what you hated, why you hated it. That's very important. I need logic behind the comments and the ideas. How cool would this be? Why? Why would that be cool? And hopefully you can sway me as well and turn me to your side. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and of course leave a comment, and I'll see you in the next video. You can click on the playlist to head to the playlist, or you can click previous or next to go to the previous or the next video, and I will see you in the next video. See you later.